The first one came in on a Tuesday, first week of November, 2021. A girl about 7, brought in by a woman who introduced herself as the child's aunt. The physical was clean, textbook clean, height and weight on the low end, but nothing that would flag a chart. That isn't what stayed with me. I asked the girl if she liked school, which is a warm-up question I use with every kid in that room. She looked at the aunt before she answered. Not a quick glance either, a full turn of the head, waiting. The aunt smiled and said, "We school at home. The children are kept in what nourishes them. Kept in what nourishes them." I wrote that phrase down that night because it sat funny in my ear. The way a word sits funny when someone pronounces it wrong on purpose. My clinic sits on the 2-lane out of a town I won't name, in a stretch of the Kentucky mountains where cell service goes patchy about half a mile past the parking lot. I've been the only pediatrician within 40 road miles since 2018. Most of my patients I know by their moms. This community started coming in around the last week of October. I hadn't seen any of them before. The address they gave was a P.O. box. The second visit was a boy, 9, brought by a man in his 60s who said he was a family friend. Boy had a small ringworm patch on his forearm. That was all. I asked him what he liked to do for fun. He looked at the man. Same head turn, same weight. The man said, "The children are kept in what nourishes them." Word for word. Same cadence, same little pause before nourishes. I run a small practice. One nurse. One front desk woman named Ruth who has worked here since before I bought the building. I asked Ruth that afternoon if she'd noticed anything about the new families. She said she'd been meaning to bring it up. All of them paid cash. All of them gave the same P.O. box. None of the adults matched across visits. She had 5 intake forms sitting on her desk and 5 different names. Over the next 3 weeks, I saw 11 of those kids, all under 12. All in good general health. Vaccinations were listed as declined, which is common enough here. I don't push on it the first visit. What I did push on, gently, was conversation. I have a script I run through with every new pediatric patient. What do you eat for breakfast? Do you have any pets? What's your favorite thing to do outside? Every one of them locked up at outside. Not outside the house, just the word. The 9-year-old with the ringworm actually pressed his lips together with his fingers, physically, like he was reminding himself. A little girl of maybe 5 started to cry without any noise, just tears, and reached for the adult with her. I stopped asking about outside. I started asking about breakfast, about siblings, about what the house sounded like at night. Some of them answered. A boy of about 6 told me they say a long prayer before food. And if you finish before the prayer is done, you say it again from the start. A girl told me her older brother had gone to help the ones on the road and hadn't come back, but she wasn't supposed to talk about him. When she said the word brother, she looked at the door. 4 different adults so far, 4 different names on the intakes, and each of them, at some point in the appointment, said the phrase, "The children are kept in what nourishes them." One woman said it while I was checking a boy's ears. Another man said it as I was writing a note about a mild eczema flare. It came out of them the way people say grace, that automatic. It didn't answer any question I had actually asked. I started writing everything down, not in the charts, in a separate notebook I kept in my bottom desk drawer, a plain composition book, the black and white marbled kind. I wrote the date, the child's first name only, the adult's stated relationship, and any phrase that repeated. By the end of November, I had 8 repeating phrases, not just the nourish one, others. The road brings what the road brings. I heard that one 4 times. He knows their number, 3 times, always in reference to the children in the household, always said with a small smile that did not reach the eyes. We do not carry the sickness of the low country. That was the answer whenever I asked why they had come to a clinic at all, if they preferred to stay separate. Every single adult gave me some version of that line, word for word, when I compared my notes side by side. The kids answered questions about their bodies fine. Where does it hurt? When did it start? Are you drinking water? Straightforward things. It was the questions about their inner lives that dropped a curtain. Do you have friends? Have you ever been to a store? Do you know what a phone is? On that last one, a boy of 8 looked at me with the flat curiosity of someone being asked about a color that doesn't exist. I want to say I was measured about all of this. I wasn't. I lost sleep. I drove home some nights and sat in my car in the driveway with the notebook on my lap, trying to decide what I was actually looking at. Isolated religious communities are not rare in that part of the state. Homeschooling is not a red flag. Distrust of outsiders is not a red flag. What I was seeing was more specific than that. These children had a script and knew when to be silent inside of it, and the adults were interchangeable delivery vehicles for a small number of memorized lines. Mid-December, a girl of about 10 came in with a hairline fracture in her left wrist. The adult with her, a woman who said she was a cousin, told me the girl had stumbled on the stones. I asked the girl what happened. She looked at the woman. The woman said, "She stumbled on the stones." The girl repeated it in the same rhythm. On the stones. Not on stones, on the stones. Like the stones were a known location. I set the wrist, wrote the referral for follow-up imaging, and walked back to my office. I sat down. I opened the notebook. I wrote out every phrase I had heard in a column, and next to each one, I wrote how many times, from how many different adults, in front of how many different children. Then I wrote down the specific gestures, the head turn for permission, the lip press, the way the smaller ones reached without looking. That was when I decided I had enough. I did not call the sheriff. I know the sheriff. He fishes with 2 of the men whose last names I had begun to guess at from cross-checking the P.O. box. I called a woman I had gone to residency with in Louisville, who now worked in a hospital system with a child protection team. I asked her, hypothetically, what a mandatory reporter did when the concern was not a single injury, but a pattern across a group of children, none of whom had said a single reportable thing out loud. She told me to write it up like I would write up a case. Objective findings first, direct quotes with dates, any physical observations, my clinical opinion at the end, and only at the end. She said to send it to the state agency directly, not the county, and to keep my own copy. I spent 3 nights on it. I typed at the kitchen table with the notebook open next to the laptop. I did not editorialize. I put in what I had heard and what I had seen. 14 children by that point. 9 adults, 22 verbatim repetitions of 8 distinct phrases. The wrist fracture and its wording, the child who mentioned a brother and looked at the door, the girl who cried without noise at the word outside. I attached the file and sent it before I could talk myself out of it. The response was slower than I wanted. The state has a specific process for closed religious communities. There are legal shields. Homeschool oversight in Kentucky is thin. I got a call 2 weeks in from an investigator asking clarifying questions. I got another call in January. Then a longer stretch of nothing that made me wonder if I had wasted the paper. They opened a case in February. I know that because a caseworker came to the clinic on a Wednesday afternoon and asked me to walk her through my notebook line by line. She had her own notebook. She wrote everything down twice. The children were interviewed under a protocol that took them out of the presence of the community adults. I don't know all of what they said. I know some of it because a portion of my file ended up cited in the intake summary, and I was asked to review it for accuracy. What the children said, when they were asked the right questions by people who were not their aunt or their cousin or their family friend, was enough to move the case forward. I'll leave it there. 2 of the children I had seen in November came back to my clinic in April, brought in by a foster placement family from 2 counties over. The older one, a boy of 9, sat on the exam table and swung his feet. I asked him if he'd had breakfast. He said pancakes. I asked him what his favorite thing to do outside was. He thought about it. He said he liked to look for the little frogs by the creek behind the new house. He did not look at anyone before he answered. I still have the notebook. It's in the same drawer. I don't open it much. I keep it because if anyone ever asks me how I knew, I want to be able to point at it and say, here, not a feeling, not a hunch. 22 lines and 8 phrases from 9 adults in front of 14 kids. The contract came through a guy I'd worked with twice before. Both jobs were clean, both paid on time. So when he called in November of 2021 about a run down I-95, I said yes before he finished the pitch. Private security, one night, escort a van from a warehouse near Jacksonville to a residence south of Miami. Art pieces for a private collector. NDA on the paperwork. Standard for that kind of work. Plus a rider I'd never seen before that basically said if the client decided not to explain something, I agreed not to ask. Double my usual rate. I signed. The warehouse was in one of those industrial strips off Zoo Parkway, where nothing has a sign out front. I got there at 9. The van was already loaded when I pulled up. A plain white Sprinter with commercial plates. No logo, no lettering, nothing. 2 guys in polo shirts closed the back doors as I walked over. They didn't introduce themselves. They handed me a manifest and a sealed envelope for the receiving party and left in a black SUV that had been idling on the other side of the lot. The driver was a heavy-set guy in his 50s, gray goatee, Carhartt jacket. He said his name was Ray. I asked if he'd done runs like this before, and he said, a few. That was the whole conversation for the first hour. I read the manifest at a gas station outside St. Augustine. 6 wooden crates. Weights ranged from 40 pounds to 220. Contents listed as mixed media, private collection, insured value redacted. There was a section for handling instructions. Keep upright, do not stack, avoid direct sunlight. Nothing about temperature, nothing about climate control, nothing about vibration limits or anything you'd expect for something worth enough to justify what they were paying us. I put it back in the folder and didn't think about it much. Art people are weird. I've escorted stuff before where the paperwork made 0 sense to me and the client didn't want it to. We drove. I was in a chase car, a rented Tahoe, 200 feet behind Ray the whole way. The plan was to stop once, halfway, for fuel and a stretch. Everything else we did without brakes. It was a Tuesday night, traffic was light, and I remember I-95 being unusually empty south of Daytona, just the 2 of us in the long-haul trucks. Around 1 in the morning, Ray's blinker came on. He pulled into a rest area between exits, one of the older ones with the concrete picnic shelters and the vending machines that half the time don't work. I followed him in. He parked at the far end, away from the trucks, killed the engine and got out. He walked around to the front of the van, put his hands on his lower back and stretched. I got out too. The air was warm for November, thick, that Florida wet warmth that never really goes away, even in the middle of the night. Crickets. A couple of moths under the sodium lights. The soda machine humming 20 yards off. Somewhere off the exit, a dog barked twice and then stopped. It was late enough that the rest area only had us and one big rig parked at the far end, with the running lights on and no sign of a driver. I asked him if everything was okay. He said, yeah, he just needed a minute. He'd been driving all day before this leg, he said, and his back was killing him. I walked a slow loop around the van, more out of habit than anything. That's what they pay you for. Check the tires, check the doors, look at the seals. Everything was fine. The rear doors had a padlock on them, industrial, and a fresh zip tie through the hasp that I'd watched them put on at the warehouse. I came back around and stood near the driver's side. Ray was leaning against the hood, not looking at me, looking out at the road. And that's when I heard it. It came from inside the van. A sound, very quiet. If a truck had been going by, I would have missed it. It was rhythmic, not machinery rhythmic. The kind of rhythm machinery makes is even and dumb. This was the other kind. It had a pause in it, a short one, then a longer one, then a short one again. Then it stopped for maybe 5 seconds. Then it started up again in the same pattern. I looked at Ray. Ray looked at the road. He said, without turning his head, "It's the ventilation, inside the crates. They're climate controlled." I said, "Okay." I stood there for maybe 10 seconds. Then I walked back to the Tahoe like everything was normal. I got in and I closed the door and I sat behind the wheel and I put both hands on it. The manifest was on the passenger seat. I didn't need to look at it again. I already knew what wasn't in it. I thought about a lot of things in those 10 seconds, and in the next few minutes while Ray finished his stretch. I thought about the pay. I thought about the NDA and the rider. I thought about the two guys in polo shirts and the SUV they'd left in, and how neither of them had looked me in the eye. I thought about the fact that I was on a rest stop in the middle of nowhere with a man I did not know, and a locked van I had not loaded, and a phone with 2 bars. I thought about what my job was. My job was to make sure nobody stopped the van, and nobody took anything out of the van. That was the whole job. Nowhere in the contract did it say anything about what was inside. Ray got back in. The van started. We pulled out onto I-95, and I followed him the rest of the way south. I didn't hear the sound again. I listened for it every time we slowed down. I rolled my window down for the last hour and drove with one hand and my head half out like a dog, trying to catch anything at all when we were side by side at a light. There was nothing. Whatever it was, if it was anything, it was quiet again. Ray drove exactly the speed limit the rest of the way, never braked hard, never took a turn faster than he needed to. The delivery address was a gated property on a canal south of Homestead, not a mansion, not what I'd pictured. A low ranch house with a long driveway and hedges taller than the roof. 2 men were waiting when we pulled in. Different men, younger. One of them opened the gate with a fob and shut it behind us before I was fully through. They unloaded the van themselves. I stood by the Tahoe and watched. They moved fast, faster than I would have moved crates of art. They didn't open anything. They didn't count anything out loud. They didn't check anything against the manifest in front of me. One of them took the sealed envelope I'd been carrying, opened it, read whatever was inside, and nodded at the other. The other one brought me a clipboard. The form was already filled out. 6 crates, received, condition acceptable, signature here. I signed it. He tore off a copy for me and folded the original into a leather portfolio and thanked me for my time. His voice was polite in a way that made it clear the conversation was over. I drove back up to a motel outside Fort Pierce and slept for 4 hours, and then I couldn't sleep anymore. That first night, I thought about the sound. I lay in a room that smelled like carpet cleaner, and I tried to remember exactly what it sounded like. Rhythmic. Short pause, long pause, short pause. Something soft hitting something soft. I told myself a dozen things it could have been. Some of them were even plausible. The second night, I thought about the ventilation. I thought about the manifest and the handling instructions, and the total absence of any line item about temperature. I thought about how quickly Ray had answered me. Not like a man reaching for an explanation, like a man reading one. The contract paid out 3 days later, double what we'd agreed on. No note, no message, just the number in my account, and a follow-up email from the guy who'd hired me, thanking me for my professionalism and letting me know I'd be a first call for future work. I never took another job from him. He stopped emailing after a while. I didn't call anyone. That's the part I keep coming back to. There was a moment, maybe a week after, sitting at my kitchen table with a beer and my phone in my hand, where I almost did. I had the non-emergency line pulled up. I sat there for a long time. And then I put the phone down, because what was I going to say? I heard a noise. I couldn't describe it. I couldn't prove it. I'd signed papers. I'd signed a lot of papers. Every one of them was a reason not to make the call. So I didn't. It's been 4 years now. The first year, I almost never thought about it. The second year, it came up more, usually late at night, usually when I was tired. By the third year, I was thinking about it every couple of weeks, whether I wanted to or not. This past year has been worse. There are moments when I'm doing something ordinary, driving, standing in line at the grocery store, and the pattern of the sound comes back to me, and I have to stop what I'm doing until it passes. I don't know what was in those crates. I want to be clear about that. I have no evidence of anything. I heard a sound at a rest stop on I-95 in November of 2021, and a man told me it was ventilation, and I finished the job and I got paid. That's all I know. The part I have trouble with is that not calling was a decision, and I made it. And every year that goes by, it feels less like something I did once, and more like something I'm still doing. The weird ones on graveyard shift don't come in yelling. That's the first thing you learn behind the cage. Yellers are just tired. The quiet ones you watch. I worked the cage at a place off the boardwalk, one of the mid-tier houses, not the big glass towers. February 2022. The floor still had plexiglass shields between the chairs at the tables, and half the dealers wore masks over their noses only. It was a Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, 1 in the morning. Snow was doing that Atlantic City thing where it comes in sideways off the ocean and never quite sticks. The floor was thin, maybe 40 players across the whole pit. You could hear the wheels on the roulette table from the cage, which almost never happens on a full night. He came in around midnight. I noticed him because he walked past the cage first and looked in at me, not through the glass, but at me, like he was checking a name off a list. Older guy, 70s, maybe closer to 80. Brown wool coat, the kind a woman picks out for a man. Neat gray hair, clean shave. Not a regular, and after 2 years on that shift, I knew most of the regulars by their walk. He bought in for $10,000, cash. Bank-strapped hundreds, not crisp, not new. The kind of stack that's been sitting somewhere a while. My coworker took the buy-in and I stamped the slip. He didn't tip. Didn't say a word besides, "Black chips, please." Voice was soft. Jersey, but with something underneath, maybe Pennsylvania. He sat at a mid-limit blackjack table, seat 3. I could see him clean from the cage window. Empty seats on either side of him. Dealer was a woman named Val, been there longer than me, dry as toast. He lost the $10,000 in about 20 minutes. 10 grand in 20 minutes isn't crazy. I've watched guys blow that in a hand. What was strange was how he lost it. He didn't chase. He didn't press. Bet the same 500 every time. And when the cards went against him, which they did, over and over, he just tapped the felt and asked for another. No sighs, no muttering, no leaning back to stretch his neck the way guys do when they're pretending it doesn't hurt. He got up, walked to the cage, and bought in for 10 more. That was when I started paying attention. I've seen tilt 100 ways. I've seen guys go quiet because they're about to snap. I've seen guys fake calm because their wife is somewhere in the building. This wasn't either. His hands weren't shaking when he counted the money out. He wasn't drunk. He wasn't high. He even smelled clean, like laundry detergent and old-fashioned aftershave. He walked back to the table. Same seat. Lost the second 10 in about 40 minutes. Slower bleed. Val busted twice and he still lost. That kind of night. Back to the cage. Another 10. This time the bills were wrapped in a rubber band, not a bank strap. Softer, older money. By that point, I'd elbowed my coworker, a kid we called Ravi, and nodded toward the table. Ravi watched for a minute and shrugged. "Whale," he said. "He's not a whale. He's dropping 30 grand on a Tuesday. He's a whale. Whales look happy." Ravi looked again, made a face I couldn't read, went back to his tray. I want to say I was worried about him. That would be the clean version. Honestly, at first, I was more curious. You spend enough nights behind glass and you start collecting people. Weird ones, especially. This guy went in the collection right away. Between hands, I kept glancing over. He never touched the little rack of chips the way most players do, restacking, clacking them together. He kept his hands flat on the felt when it wasn't his turn, palms down, like he was steadying himself on a boat. He lost the third 10. He came back for a fourth. That time, the money was in an envelope, a regular white envelope, the kind you'd mail a birthday card in. He slid it under the window and said, "This should be 9. I'm sorry, I know it's short." Ravi counted it. 9,200. Ravi looked at me. I looked at the old man. He wasn't apologizing in a nervous way. He was apologizing the way somebody apologizes for taking the last cookie. We took the money, gave him the chips. He said, "Thank you very much," and walked back. That was when I started thinking about calling somebody. We have a process. If a player looks like he's in trouble, we flag it to a floor supervisor. They pull him aside, hand him a card with a number. But he wasn't screaming. He wasn't crying. He wasn't asking for a marker. By every rule, he was a customer having a bad night. Val got tapped out and a new dealer came in. Younger guy, Marcus. The old man nodded at him like they knew each other, though I don't think they did. Just polite. Around 2:30, I saw him do the thing with the photograph. He'd just lost a big hand, doubled down and lost. He didn't react. He put his hand into the inside pocket of the wool coat hanging on the back of his chair and pulled out something small. From the cage, it looked like a card, but the way he held it, angled toward himself, I knew it was a photograph. He looked at it. Not for long, maybe 5 seconds. Then he put it back, patted the coat once, and slid a stack of chips forward. Last bet. He pushed everything in front of him at once. Marcus stopped, looked over his shoulder for a supervisor, then looked back at the old man. The old man nodded once. Marcus dealt. 14. Dealer showed a 9. He tapped. Bust card. Done. Marcus said something quiet. The old man smiled. Actually smiled. The way people smile at a joke that isn't funny but is still their kind of joke. Then he sat there, didn't move, didn't get up, didn't ask for another buy-in. I told Ravi I was taking my 10. I wasn't. I grabbed the chip rack we use for color-ups at the table, walked out from behind the cage, and went over. Casino floor smell hit me the second I stepped out. That mix of carpet cleaner and cigarette smoke that lives in the fibers, even in a non-smoking section. I could hear the ocean, kind of, under the machines. That building has bad seals. I stopped a polite distance from his chair. "Sir, any chips to color up? Save you a trip." He looked at me, blue eyes, watery but clear. Not drunk watery, just old. "I don't have any left, son." "Okay," I said. "Just checking." "Long night?" He considered it. I remember thinking he was going to tell me to mind my business. He said, "I'm losing everything she left me. She wanted me to enjoy myself with it." That was her word, enjoy. He said it flat, not shaky, not proud, like he was telling me the weather. I didn't know what to say. I said, "Oh." He reached into the coat again and pulled out the photograph, turned it around and held it up for me, patient, like he was showing a kid. Older woman, maybe 65 in the picture, hard to say. Sitting at a kitchen table with a coffee cup, hair going gray at the temples. One of those small, polite smiles you give when someone tells you to look at the camera. Behind her was a window with a plant on the sill, and I remember thinking the light in the picture was afternoon light, not morning. Weird thing to notice, but I noticed it. He turned the photograph over, handwriting on the back, blue pen, careful cursive. "Spend it on something stupid, love you." He let me read it. Then he flipped it back, looked at her one more time, and slid it into his inside pocket. "She always said I was too careful with money," he said. "Wouldn't buy a coat unless it was on sale. Wouldn't take her anywhere without a coupon. She said if I outlived her, I had to promise." She wrote it down. "How long?" I asked. "November. I'm sorry." He waved that off, gentle. Not offended, just done with that part. "Can I get you a coffee? On the house?" "No, thank you. I'm going to sit a while. Is that all right?" "Sit as long as you want." I walked back to the cage, didn't look over my shoulder. I don't know why, felt rude. He sat there for another hour, maybe a little more. Didn't order a drink, didn't play. Just watched the hands play out around him, once in a while nodding when Marcus said something under the mask. Around 3:45, he got up, put the coat on, one arm at a time, careful, buttoned it all the way to the top. Walked past the cage on his way out. Didn't look at me this time. He looked lighter. Not happy, that's not the right word, but lighter. Like a man walking home in a coat his wife picked out for him. In a city she probably didn't love. On a night that was, by his lights, exactly what she asked for. Ravi said, "That was 39 grand. I said, "Yeah." Then I stamped the next slip that came through the window, and I didn't think about him again until my shift ended and I stepped out into the lot, and the snow was still coming in sideways off the ocean.